On April 8, 1943, at 27,000 feet above occupied France, German ace Oberleutnant Ralph Herrmann watched a bulky silhouette climbing laboriously through crystal-clear skies and couldn't suppress his smirk. The new American fighters, ungainly P-47 Thunderbolts with their barrel-shaped fuselages and seemingly undersized wings, looked almost comical to pilots bred on sleek Spitfires and nimble German machines. "They've sent us flying milk bottles," Herrmann transmitted to his wingman, his laughter echoing through the radio as 16 American fighters struggled upward, their massive 2,000-horsepower Pratt & Whitney engines straining against nearly 7 tons of weight. Neither he nor any German pilot circling above could have imagined they were witnessing the arrival of the weapon that would systematically dismantle the Luftwaffe's fighter dominance within 18 months, transforming objects of derision into instruments of terror that would define aerial warfare itself. What the Germans dismissed as crude and primitive actually represented revolutionary thinking. The Republic P-47 wasn't designed to match European fighters at their own game. It was engineered around American industrial philosophy: overwhelming power, exceptional durability, and devastating firepower concentrated in a machine that could absorb punishment that would obliterate any conventional fighter. Chief designer Alexander Kartveli, Republic Aviation's Georgian-born genius, had created something unprecedented when he received urgent specifications in June 1940 as German fighters swept across France. "It will be a dinosaur," he admitted to his design team, "but a dinosaur with excellent proportions." When the XP-47B prototype first flew on May 6, 1941, test pilots were astonished. This 9,900-pound behemoth actually handled magnificently at altitude, something no competitor could claim. The massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp radial engine, producing 2,000 horsepower from 18 cylinders, maintained full power at 27,000 feet, where German fighters gasped for air. A revolutionary turbo-supercharger system, fed by exhaust gases and running through the rear fuselage, delivered sea-level performance in the stratosphere, where thin air should have rendered conventional superchargers useless. This single innovation created a decisive advantage that German engineers couldn't match: the ability to perform optimally at altitudes where oxygen was scarce and enemies were helpless. Yet the early months proved brutal. Major Hub Zemke, commanding the 56th Fighter Group, initially despised the aircraft, watching 18 pilots and 41 Thunderbolts lost to training accidents between September 1942 and January 1943. The P-47 killed more Americans in preparation than Germans would in combat's opening months. It ground-looped on landing, torque-rolled on takeoff, and dove with such enthusiasm that pilots discovered compressibility, their controls freezing as shock waves formed along the wings. Those who mastered its complexities discovered something extraordinary that changed everything. Lieutenant Robert Johnson, a farm boy from Oklahoma destined to become America's top ace with 27 victories, described his first real flight. "It was like strapping yourself to a locomotive. The power was unbelievable. You didn't fly it, you aimed it." This fundamental difference in philosophy separated American from European approaches. While German designers pursued lightweight interceptors optimized for climb and maneuverability, Republic Aviation created a high-altitude juggernaut that used mass, power, and firepower to rewrite the rules of aerial warfare. The first combat encounters in April and May 1943 confirmed every German prejudice. P-47s couldn't turn with the nimble F-190s, couldn't climb with the agile Messerschmitts at medium altitude, and couldn't match their handling characteristics where conventional thinking suggested superiority mattered most. German pilots quickly developed tactics exploiting these perceived weaknesses, attacking from below where heavy Thunderbolts struggled, forcing turning fights where agility supposedly trumped firepower. Hauptmann Josef Pips Priller, commanding Jagdgeschwader 26, reported after his first encounter, "The new American fighter is meat for slaughter. It flies like a truck, turns like a freight train, and climbs like a pregnant cow. Our boys are calling them fat targets, pretending to be warriors. The statistics initially supported German confidence. In their first month of operations, American fighter groups lost 14 Thunderbolts for only 3 confirmed German kills. The RAF, observing from their Spitfire squadrons, quietly suggested Americans might reconsider their aircraft choice. British pilots joked that the best evasive maneuver in a P-47 was unstrapping and running around the spacious cockpit. Yet something strange was happening in these early encounters that German intelligence failed to notice. Thunderbolts shot down had absorbed incredible punishment before falling.
One P-47 returned from a May 4th mission with 21 cannon holes and over 100 machine gun strikes, damage that would have disintegrated a Messerschmitt or Spitfire instantly. The massive, air-cooled radial engine, lacking vulnerable coolant systems, shrugged off impacts that would have stopped liquid-cooled fighters dead. More significantly, when Thunderbolts got their guns on target, results were catastrophic. The weapons battery created a convergence zone of destruction German pilots had never experienced. 8 synchronized Browning machine guns firing at 6,000 rounds per minute, equivalent to 3,400 rounds total per sortie. Unlike early warfighters with rifle-caliber weapons or limited cannon ammunition, American pilots could maintain sustained fire for over 30 seconds, an eternity in aerial combat. The ammunition itself revealed American industrial sophistication, armor-piercing incendiary rounds with delayed-action fuses ensuring penetration before detonation, with incendiary compounds burning at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to ignite aluminum structure. The revelatory moment arrived on June 26, 1943 over Abbeville, France. Second Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson's formation of 48 P-47s was returning from escort duty when 16 Focke-Wulf 190s from Jagdgeschwader 26, led by Hauptmann Wilhelm Spike Preuler, younger brother of famous Adolf Galland, executed a perfect bounce, diving from the sun with overwhelming speed advantage. Johnson's Thunderbolt, flying at the formation's rear, caught crossfire from multiple attackers, absorbing catastrophic damage instantly. 2 20mm cannon shells exploded across his aircraft, shattering the canopy, spraying hydraulic fluid into the cockpit, tearing away the engine cowling, and igniting fire behind the instrument panel. Wounded in the nose and leg by shrapnel, Johnson discovered the canopy was jammed shut. A 20mm shell had exploded in the track, welding it permanently. He was trapped in a dying aircraft at 27,000 feet, unable to bail out, unable to see clearly through an oil-covered windscreen, with an engine barely functioning and controls responding only intermittently. What happened next defied every assumption about damage tolerance in combat aircraft. Despite catastrophic structural damage, hydraulic failure, engine trauma, and control degradation, Johnson managed to level the aircraft and point it toward England. The Thunderbolt continued flying with injuries that would reduce any other fighter to falling debris. Then it got exponentially worse. A lone Focke-Wulf 190 flown by an unknown pilot discovered the crippled Thunderbolt limping toward the channel at less than 170 miles per hour. What followed became one of aerial warfare's most extraordinary encounters. The German pilot positioned behind Johnson and opened fire with his 20mm cannon and 2 13mm machine guns, then repositioned and fired again with only machine guns as cannon ammunition exhausted. The Thunderbolt absorbed the entire attack. The German pulled alongside, staring in disbelief at the flying wreck, Johnson's face visible to him, and something shifted in the German pilot's expression, from confidence to confusion to something approaching fear. After emptying his remaining ammunition, the German shook his head in amazement, gave an informal salute, and peeled away, presumably out of ammunition entirely. Johnson's P-47 landed at Manston with its engine failing on the runway. The crew chief stopped counting bullet holes after reaching 200. One cannon shell had exploded inches from Johnson's head. Another detonated against the armor plate behind his seat. The engine had taken direct hits. Control cables were partially severed.
3 of the 4 main longerons, the structural backbone holding the fuselage together, were shot completely through, yet the aircraft had brought him home intact. The survival of Johnson's Thunderbolt sent shockwaves through both air forces. American engineers studying the wreckage realized they had underestimated their own creation. German intelligence, receiving combat reports from Jagdgeschwader 26's pilots, initially refused to believe it. No aircraft could absorb that much punishment, but multiple pilot testimony confirmed the impossible. The Thunderbolt had endured everything the Luftwaffe's best fighter could deliver and survived to fly again.
By July 1943, American pilots were learning to exploit the P-47's true strengths through brutal trial and error. Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Zemke discovered the secret. Don't turn with them, don't climb with them at low altitude. Use your weight, use your power, use your guns. The Thunderbolt's massive weight, initially perceived as a disadvantage, became a devastating weapon. In a dive from 30,000 feet, nothing could catch it. A P-47 could reach 550 miles per hour, faster than any German fighter could achieve even in vertical dives. This speed converted to altitude in zoom climbs that left pursuing fighters helplessly behind. Captain Walker Bud Maharan developed what became known as the boom and zoom tactic, though pilots called it the Thunderbolt turkey shoot. Instead of traditional dogfighting, P-47 formations would climb to 30,000 feet, higher than German fighters could effectively operate. When Luftwaffe fighters appeared below, Thunderbolts rolled inverted and dived, reaching speeds that made deflection shooting impossible for defending Germans. At the bottom of these dives, 8 synchronized Browning machine guns spoke in unison, creating a wall of lead that disintegrated anything caught in the convergence pattern.
The true revelation of American firepower came during the August 17, 1943 dual raid on Schweinfurt and Regensburg, the deepest penetration into Germany attempted to that date. Major David Schilling, leading the 62nd Fighter Squadron, encountered a formation of Messerschmitt 110s or Storer aircraft, specialized heavy fighters armed with devastating cannon and rocket armament designed as bomber killers. These twin-engine Germans, heavily armed but less maneuverable, were the Luftwaffe's professional anti-bomber weapon. Schilling's flight of 4 Thunderbolts rolled into attack from 28,000 feet. In less than 2 minutes, 8 Messerschmitts were destroyed. Not shot down, destroyed. Wings separated from fuselages, tails severed, crew compartments shredded into metal confetti. German pilot Oberfeldwebel Heinz Roth, gunner in one surviving 110, later recounted, "The American fighters came down like hammers from heaven. I opened fire at 800 meters with good hits. I saw them strike the fighter's wing. The P-47 didn't even wobble. Then he fired. The aircraft ahead simply came apart. Not shot down, destroyed." This was American firepower as Europeans had never experienced it. 8 guns firing simultaneously at convergence point, creating a 6-foot diameter zone where 100 projectiles per second, each traveling at 2,900 feet per second, guaranteed instant annihilation.
By September 1943, the Luftwaffe discovered another horrifying reality. P-47 performance improved dramatically with altitude while German fighters suffered. The turbo-supercharged double Wasp engine maintained its rated power output to 30,000 feet. German fighters, relying on single-stage or two-stage mechanical superchargers, degraded significantly above 25,000 feet. Oberdienstführer Hans Philipp, one of Germany's most successful aces with 206 victories, encountered this reality fatally on October 8, 1943. Leading Jagdgeschwader 1 against B-17s at 28,000 feet over Bremen, Philipp found his Focke-Wulf 190 A6 sluggish and unresponsive in thin air. The BMW 801 engine, powerful at medium altitudes, gasping for oxygen nearly 6 miles above Earth. When P-47s from the 56th Fighter Group dove from 32,000 feet, German fighters were defenseless. Robert Johnson, now an experienced combat pilot on his way to ace status, spotted Phillips' distinctive Focke-Wulf with its elaborate nosard. Johnson's combat report was clinical. Opened fire at 300 yards, 30-degree deflection. Observed strikes along entire fuselage. Enemy aircraft exploded. No parachute observed. Phillips' death sent shockwaves through the Luftwaffe. If one of their best, a man who had survived over 500 combat missions on both Eastern and Western fronts, couldn't survive against Thunderbolts, what chance did average pilots have?
German High Command ordered immediate investigation into P-47 capabilities. The report, delivered to Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring in November 1943, was sobering. The Thunderbolt's service ceiling exceeded 42,000 feet, higher than any German fighter could reach. Its dive speed approached the sound barrier. Its armor included a 3/8-inch steel plate behind the pilot, 1/2-inch bulletproof glass windscreen, and armored deflection plates around the engine. Most disturbingly, its rugged construction allowed it to absorb damage that would destroy 3 conventional fighters and still return home. In January 1944, the P-47D-22 began arriving, featuring a Hamilton Standard hydromatic propeller with paddle blades 13 feet in diameter, with broad chord blades that bit into air like massive oars. Climb rate improved immediately and dramatically. Where earlier Thunderbolts achieved an anemic 2,200 feet per minute at sea level, paddle blade variants reached 3,000 feet per minute, matching or exceeding German fighters at most altitudes. The massive propeller also improved acceleration and changed the aircraft's signature sound, a distinctive thundering roar created by blade tips reaching supersonic speeds audible for miles, earning it the German name Donnerschlag, or thunderclap.
By March 1944, P-47s equipped with external fuel tanks could escort bombers deep into Germany, extending range over 1,000 miles. With the paddle blade propeller providing improved performance even when loaded, Thunderbolts could fight on equal terms immediately after dropping tanks. The Luftwaffe's response concentrated on bombers, hoping to inflict enough losses to stop the American daylight campaign. But this required flying through the P-47 escort screen, an increasingly suicidal proposition. German pilots developed grudging respect, bordering on fear for the big American fighters. Major Gerhard Barkhorn, one of Germany's top aces with 301 victories, survived an encounter with P-47s on March 6, 1944, that left him badly wounded. He later recalled, "We saw them above us, fat silhouettes against the sun. Someone laughed and said, 'Here come the flying pigs.' Nobody was laughing 30 seconds later. They came down like an avalanche, faster than we could react. The first pass destroyed 3 of our fighters, just gone, transformed into burning debris. Their guns didn't fire in bursts like ours. They poured out solid streams of fire. Getting caught in that stream meant instant death." The escort missions revealed another P-47 advantage: endurance. While German fighters operated at maximum power settings, consuming fuel rapidly, the big American radials could cruise efficiently at high altitude, remaining with bombers for hours while rotating top cover and maintaining enough fuel for combat and return. As more P-51 Mustangs arrived to handle long-range escort duties in spring 1944, P-47 units increasingly focused on ground attack, a role making them the most feared aircraft in the German arsenal. The transition began in earnest in April 1944 as Allies prepared for the invasion of France. The Thunderbolt's heavy machine gun battery proved equally effective against ground targets. Armor-piercing incendiary ammunition could penetrate the top armor of most German vehicles, while sheer volume of fire destroyed soft targets in seconds. A 2-second burst delivered 160 half-inch projectiles into a truck-sized target area. But the addition of bombs and rockets transformed the P-47 into a true multi-role monster. The D-25 variant could carry two 1,000-pound bombs under wings and a 500-pounder under the fuselage, a bomb load equal to early war medium bombers, plus zero-length rocket stubs for 10 5-inch high-velocity aircraft rockets, each equivalent to a 105mm artillery shell. On June 6, 1944, the Luftwaffe discovered how completely the power balance had shifted. Over 500 P-47s provided air cover for the invasion, creating an impenetrable umbrella over the beaches. German fighters attempting to reach the landing zones were massacred. Oberleutnant Wolfgang Fischer of Jagdgeschwader 26, one of only 3 German pilots to reach the beaches that day, reported, "The sky belonged to the Americans. Thunderbolts were stacked from sea level to 30,000 feet. We tried to break through at dawn with 12 fighters. I was the only one to return. The P-47s were waiting at every altitude. You couldn't climb over them, couldn't dive under them. Their guns turned our fighters into aluminum rain." In the weeks following D-Day, P-47s systematically destroyed German movement in daylight. Statistics were staggering. In June alone, 9th Air Force Thunderbolts claimed 651 locomotives, 3,847 trucks, 512 tanks and armored vehicles, and 4,553 horse-drawn vehicles destroyed. The Wehrmacht was forced to move only at night, severely hampering their ability to respond to Allied advances.
The final statistics of P-47 operations defied comprehension. In Europe alone, 3,752 German aircraft destroyed in aerial combat, 3,315 aircraft destroyed on the ground, 86,000 railway cars destroyed, 9,000 locomotives destroyed, 6,000 armored fighting vehicles destroyed, 68,000 trucks destroyed, and 60,000 horse-drawn vehicles destroyed. In the Pacific, 697 Japanese aircraft destroyed in aerial combat, 150 aircraft destroyed on the ground, 1,500 vehicles destroyed, and 15 locomotives destroyed. Republic Aviation produced 15,683 P-47s during the war, more than any other American fighter. At peak production, the Farmingdale factory on Long Island completed 1 Thunderbolt every hour around the clock. The Evansville plant in Indiana, built from empty farmland in 1942, was producing 500 aircraft per month by 1944. Each P-47D required 65,000 individual parts, 8 miles of electrical wiring, 2,000 pounds of aluminum, and 300 pounds of rubber. Yet American workers, many of them women who had never seen an aircraft before Pearl Harbor, assembled these complex machines with precision exceeding peacetime standards. Perhaps the ultimate vindication came from the architects of German defeat themselves. In 1985, at a Phoenix reunion of German and American fighter pilots meeting in peace, General Lieutenant Adolf Galland, former head of the Luftwaffe fighter arm, was asked about the P-47. His response, recorded on video, captured the complete transformation in German perspective. "We made a terrible mistake in 1943. We saw this big, heavy fighter and laughed. The Americans don't understand air combat, we said. They built a bomber and called it a fighter. We were the ones who didn't understand. The Americans didn't try to build a European fighter. They built an American one designed around production, firepower, and survivability. They understood that in a war of attrition, the plane that could take punishment and deliver devastating firepower would win. They were right. The first time I flew a captured P-47 after the war, I understood everything. The power was incredible. It climbed like it was falling upward. The cockpit was comfortable, visibility excellent, controls precise, a pilot's aircraft wrapped in armor. But what really impressed me was realizing that America built over 15,000 of these complex machines while fighting a 2-ocean war. That's when I knew we never had a chance. They didn't beat us through better tactics or braver pilots. They buried us under an avalanche of steel and lead.